When is the slippery slope fallacy really a fallacy? Welcome to Critical Thinking Scan, where we look at how you can think about any faith-challenging message and arrive at a biblical, logical conclusion yourself. I'm Patricia Engler, and today let's look at another type of potential fallacy or faulty form of reasoning which creationists are sometimes accused of using. It's called the slippery slope fallacy, also known as the thin edge of the wedge, or, I'm not making this up, the camel's nose in the tent. The idea of slippery slope arguments is that they say one action or belief will inevitably, or at least very likely, lead to another and another with dire consequences. For instance, if you leave the gate open, then the dog will escape. If the dog escapes, it'll attack the mail carrier. If it attacks the mail carrier, then important mail will be delayed. If important mail is delayed, society will collapse. Therefore, if you leave the gate open, society will collapse. As you might have noticed, this type of argument involves a series of if-then statements stuck together, which we saw in episode 46 is an argument structure called a hypothetical syllogism. Logically, this is a valid structure because if the premises are true, the conclusion must be true as well. However, the problem with slippery slope arguments is that it's sometimes hard to tell how true the if-then premises really are. Will society collapse if the mail gets delayed? That doesn't seem likely. Since it can be hard to tell how certain some if-then statements are, slippery slope arguments aren't usually meant to be deductive arguments which prove an outcome will happen so much as inductive arguments which imply an outcome is likely. So, slippery slope arguments are only considered fallacies if the outcome isn't necessarily likely given the premises. There are two questions you can ask to help discern how likely the outcome will be, and therefore, how strong the argument is. Question number 1. How probable is each if-then statement? For example, how likely would the dog escape if the gate were left open? And how likely would the mail carrier be attacked if the dog escaped? The less likely the outcomes, the weaker the argument. Then question number 2 is, how many if-then statements are there? The longer the chain of events, the less likely the final outcome can be if each event has an associated uncertainty. For instance, if it's only 50% likely the dog would escape if the gate were left open and 50% likely that the mail carrier would be attacked, then there's only a 0.5 times 0.5 or 25% chance that the mail would actually be delayed. On the other hand, if you can show that each if-then statement is highly likely or certain, the resulting argument is inductively strong, and therefore not a fallacy. Now, let's see how this can play out in the creation-evolution controversy. In an article entitled Argumentation and Fallacies in Creationist Writings Against Evolutionary Theory, which I discussed in episode 32, a research team suggested that creationists use the slippery slope fallacy when they identify the negative societal outcomes that accompany widespread belief in evolutionary origins, including rising rates of racism, abortion, and euthanasia. So, is this a fallacy? Only if belief in evolution is not logically consistent with these outcomes. But, like you can learn from the linked resources, multiple scholars have documented in detail the direct links between belief in evolution and outcomes including racism, abortion, and euthanasia. Because if humans are merely evolved animals, there's no logical reason for humans to have greater rights than any other evolved animals. If we euthanize spare animals, then we should be able to euthanize spare humans. Naturally, not every evolutionist will want to enforce this conclusion. But the point is that it's logically consistent with an evolutionary worldview, like you can learn from the linked resources. If humans evolved apart from God, then humans are left to define morality, and even secular scholars like former Yale law professor Dr. Arthur Leff have realized that truly defining moral absolutes logistically doesn't work without God. Of course, showing that evolution leads to serious consequences doesn't prove whether evolution is false. But it does show the societal importance of defending the truth of God's Word, beginning in Genesis. For more on how to think critically about messages that challenge God's Word, you can access my other CT Scan videos packed with tactics, tips, and tools that helped me as a Christian student at secular university. Thank you for watching. Hey, it's Patricia here. Just wanting to let you know that if you like these videos, a free, easy way to help Answers in Genesis Canada create more content and equip more people to defend their faith is to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, click the bell, and of course, share these resources. That lets the social media algorithms help these videos reach more people who can benefit from them, saving us advertising expenses while promoting biblical authority. Thank you so much.